continuously introduce yourself to difficult situations where you are forced to either sink or swim. A great Spartan must have the ability to quickly adapt. Refuse to be a victim of circumstance. Learn to be self-reliant and prepared for any situation. Find ways to implement short bursts of discomfort into your daily life. This will ensure growth and prevent you from falling into sloth. Dedicate yourself to perpetual physical training, regardless of circumstance and feelings.
God, in His wonderful way, arranges circumstances so that we struggle. That's the best thing for us. And you still follow the principles of God. And if we can teach our children self-denial, that's the greatest lesson. Don't envy those, you young people, don't envy those other children whose parents are rich, who they can have everything. Don't envy them. Wait 20 years and see where they are. Useless to God and useless to man. Be thankful if you've got parents who refuse to give you certain things that you asked for because they wanted you to grow up godly. To teach our children to stand up for the Lord. To teach our children to stand for the truth. Don't teach your children to be popular. Jesus was not. He was despised and rejected by men.
Many principles that our Western civilization is based on comes from the Roman era and also before that the Greek era. And of the most famous of all the Greek city-states is Sparta and the Spartans. Listen to this little clip about how they lived, how they raised their children, how they behaved. They probably epitomize discipline, but also learning if you look at the Greeks as well. When you combine learning and discipline and hard work, great things can happen. Their women were also known as very disciplined and very tenacious. A lot of the virtues the men held to, the women also held to.
In 490 BC, the Persians under the banner of King Darius had invaded Greece, but were defeated at the Battle of Marathon by the Athenians. However, the Persians were not deterred and sought to expand their empire by conquering Greece once and for all. An Athenian politician and general Themistocles proposed that the allied Greeks block the advance of the Persian army at the pass of Thermopylae in order to give time for the rest of the Greek states to build their defenses and mobilize their armies. Consequently, King Leonidas of Sparta was chosen to command a Greek force of approximately 7,000 men to march north to block the pass of Thermopylae. In this army were the great 300 Spartan warriors trained like no other men. Boys born in Sparta were trained from the age of 7 to become perfect fighters, and their training was rigorous and demanding. The boys were taken away from their families and brought to a military camp, where they were taught how to fight, survive in harsh conditions, and endure pain. The Spartan warriors were known for their physical strength and endurance. They were required to train for hours every day and were subjected to a strict diet and discipline. They were not allowed to eat fancy food or wear fancy clothes, and they were required to sleep on hard beds. This was done to toughen them up and make them immune to pain and suffering. Persian army, on the other hand, was massive, estimated to be between 150,000 to 300,000 soldiers. The Greeks knew they were outnumbered and outmatched by the Persians, so they decided to make a stand at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, where their small numbers would be less of a disadvantage. According to historians, Leonidas knew he was marching to certain death, which is why he only took warriors with living sons in his army. Xerxes sent an ambassador with the message to Leonidas saying, "Hand over your arms," to which Leonidas famously replied, "Come and take them." After the message exchange, war was inevitable. Xerxes ordered 5,000 archers to shoot a barrage of arrows, but they were ineffective. They shot from at least 100 yards away, but the Greeks' wooden shields and bronze helmets deflected the arrows. After that, Xerxes dispatched an army of 10,000 Medes to capture the defenders and bring them before him. The Greeks, however, battled in the narrowest portion of the pass, where they could utilize the fewest warriors. A Phocian wall was a battle strategy in which the troops built a wall of overlapping shields, with stacked spear points sticking out from the edges of the shields, which proved to be extremely effective as it spanned the entire width of the pass. The Greeks proved to be superior in size, courage, and strength. Leonidas and his 300 Spartans were positioned in the front line, where they would bear the brunt of the Persian attack. He rotated his men back and forth to the front of the shield wall to prevent his soldiers from fatigue. The Greeks were able to kill so many of the Persian soldiers that Xerxes is said to have stood up 3 times from the seat at which he was watching the battle from. The first wave of Xerxes' soldiers was cut to ribbons, with only 2 or 3 Spartans killed in return. Xerxes then threw his best troops into a second assault the same day, the Immortals, an elite corps of 10,000 men. However, the Immortals fared no better than the Medes and failed to make any headway against the Greeks. On the second day of the battle, Xerxes again sent in the infantry to attack the pass, supposing that their enemies, being so few, were now disabled by wounds and could no longer resist. However, the Persians found no success. The Persian king kept sending wave after wave of 10,000 men, only to return defeated or killed. Xerxes at last stopped the assault and withdrew to his camp, totally speechless. The Battle of Thermopylae has become a symbol of heroic resistance against overwhelming odds, and it has inspired countless works of art, literature, and film. The story of Leonidas and his 300 Spartan warriors has become legendary, and it continues to captivate people around the world.
I wish next to explain the educational system of Lycurgus and how it differs from other systems. In the other Greek states, parents who profess to give their sons the best education place their boys under the care and control of a moral tutor as soon as they can understand what is said to them, and send them to a school to learn letters, music, and the exercises of the wrestling ground. Moreover, they soften the children's feet by giving them sandals, and pamper their bodies with changes of clothing, and it is customary to allow them as much food as they can eat. Lycurgus, on the contrary, instead of leaving each father to appoint a slave to act as tutor, gave the duty of controlling the boys to a member of the class from which the highest offices are filled. In fact, to the warden, as he was called. He gave this person authority to gather the boys together, to take charge of them, and to punish them severely in case of misconduct. He also assigned him a staff of youths provided with whips to chastise them when necessary, and the result is that modesty and obedience are inseparable companions at Sparta. I have now dealt with the Spartan system of education and that of the other Greek states. Which system turns out men more obedient, more respectful, and more strictly temperate?
So Spartan children were taught at an early age that heavy drinking was for slaves only. Every now and then, Spartan soldiers would force their slaves to get drunk to the point of belligerence. Once thoroughly blotto, the soldiers would parade the drunk slaves in front of the local children to let them see how ridiculous they looked.
The Spartans were tough, fierce, and feared in their era. In 820 BC, the legislator Lycurgus set a code of standards and laws for the Spartan people. Amongst this way of living was having austerity of military and really almost everything in life, equality of free citizens, health and physical fitness, and the discouragement of greed. In fact, early Sparta was so against the hoarding of wealth, they refused to use coinage.
The greatest shame for a Spartan was to return home alive from a lost battle. So too, do not return from a challenge having not given everything. Only consume plain food and never eat to the point of satisfaction. This will not only bring about a leanness for battle, but also foster mental fortitude. Seek out intense competition. You will push yourself much harder. Speed, strength, and agility are less essential than stamina, grit, endurance, and courage. Do not engage in gossip. Only engage in conversation that will nourish and strengthen your spirit. Surround yourself with people who are ruthlessly devoted to becoming their greatest selves. A leader does not watch on safely from the rear. Continuously introduce yourself to difficult situations where you are forced to either sink or swim. A great Spartan must have the ability to quickly adapt. Refuse to be a victim of circumstance. Learn to be self-reliant and prepared for any situation. Find ways to implement short bursts of discomfort into your daily life. This will ensure growth and prevent you from falling into sloth. Dedicate yourself to perpetual physical training, regardless of circumstance and feelings.
God, in His wonderful way, arranges circumstances so that we struggle. That's the best thing for us. And you still follow the principles of God. And if we can teach our children self-denial, that's the greatest lesson. Don't envy those, you young people, don't envy those other children whose parents are rich, who they can have everything. Don't envy them. Wait 20 years and see where they are. Useless to God and useless to man. Be thankful if you've got parents who refuse to give you certain things that you asked for because they wanted you to grow up godly. To teach our children to stand up for the Lord. To teach our children to stand for the truth. Don't teach your children to be popular. Jesus was not. He was despised and rejected by men.